The government's school kids bonus has passed through the lower house of the parliament. The coalition voted against it. It remains opposed to it, arguing it's a sugar hit that can be wasted on things like gambling on the pokies.
Problem with this particular measure is that it's called a school kids bonus, but it has nothing to do with education. It's just another cash payment.
How is that any different to the baby bonus, for example?
Well, look, they just are.
Oh, well, there's a vast difference.
What?
You have to have a baby.
In a masterstroke in Australian politics, his answer was, well, look, they just are. And then the shadow treasurer, when asked what is the difference, said, and I quote, there's a vast difference. What he's asked, well, you have to have a baby to get the baby bonus. Well, apparently the shadow treasurer doesn't know babies grow into school children.
That was part of the debate yesterday relating to the school kids bonus. With me now, the Schools Minister, Peter Garrett. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Kieran.
The talk about this, the debate around this policy, the coalition says it's a sugar hit. And it's about the carbon tax. Given that it's coming in June, just a month before the carbon tax comes into force, that's a fair assertion, isn't it?
Look, I think the last 24 hours, Kieran, have told us a lot about Tony Abbott. He's usually relentlessly negative, but he doesn't normally declare his cards that he has no trust or faith in Australian parents at all. And that's effectively what Mr Abbott said yesterday. The fact is that Australian parents do face real cost of living pressures. Mr Abbott's showing that he doesn't get that, but also we knew that this education tax refund wasn't working as effectively as it could have. We're looking for ways to make sure that parents who've got real costs in terms of education can have some support to do that. It was incredible that we went through the charade yesterday of both the opposition leader and the treasurer declaring, firstly, that they really didn't know what they were talking about. Secondly, in Mr Hockey's case, saying, well, look, one's about babies, what's the other one about? I mean, parents take the education of their kids very seriously, as does this government. So yesterday, they've exposed themselves.
But being delivered in June, normally parents would face their costs in January, February, the start of the school year. June, how can people not think it's part of the carbon tax, an attempt to try and soften the blow or to help people through what are expected to be additional costs there?
Well, look, I think you've got to say to yourself, if we had a measure which we didn't think was reaching as many Australian families as it was designed to, then the appropriate course of action is to make sure that it does, and then put in place a mechanism that provides support for families at the time it's suited. So once we've made up that opportunity for Australian families, beginning of term 1 and before term 3. And when we do that, we'll see that families that are sitting there in their kitchens going, geez, you know, we've got to find some money for new track shoes, or there's a backpack that one of the kids needs. Oh, look, more books are needed, or perhaps there's some program that they've been asked to do and they can't actually find the money for it. It's going to be there.
But there's no guarantee, is there? You've been critical of the coalition for saying that parents will spend it elsewhere. But when you have a payment of upwards of $820, I think it is, for secondary students, $410 for primary students, these are one-off payments. You don't know how each family is going to spend it, do you? There's no commitment or demand that they spend it just on school education.
Kieran, you know what? Families make hundreds of decisions every week about their kids. Every family that I'm interacting with, or every parent in a school, takes the education of their kids very seriously, and families face cost of living pressures. Of course, they should have the opportunity to receive some support from this government, which they now are, to apply that support to the very real costs that they have, including in education. And for Tony Abbott and for Joe Hockey to basically completely diss the parents of Australia by making some assumptions that they're going to fritter away support that we're providing them, when we all know in this place that parents face real cost of living pressures. And we also know, and I especially know as School Education Minister, that they take the education of their kids seriously.
As the Minister for School Education, he disappointed the government hasn't stumped up the cash to deliver some of the reforms proposed in the Gonski review. The government made a lot of this just a couple of months ago, but nothing really in the budget to take that forward.
Well, we've always said, Kieran, that with these Gonski Education Review recommendations, they wouldn't be addressed in this budget. We've always said that. We've said we want to work through the processes with the states and stakeholders. We're doing that. We have working groups underway, and we need to reach agreement on an education funding model that would best suit Australian students. Now, we've provided some additional support for that work in this budget, about $5.8 million. That's to make sure that the data and the collection of information and the working groups do their job thoroughly. This will be one of the most important education reforms that Australia has ever seen. We want to get it right. We're doing it in an orderly, appropriate and diligent fashion.
Is the money there, though? Because the Treasurer has said that he's going to deliver this $1.5 billion surplus regardless of what happens to revenues. Is the money going to be there?
Well, let me just finish this point, then I'll answer that question. And we've always said that we would go through that process with the states and with education stakeholders. Now, they know about that timetable. That timetable goes past this budget. Once we've reached that point, then we're in a position to sit down and discuss and negotiate where needed what a future funding model will look like. At that point in time, of course, there'll be a discussion about money, but I don't intend to say anything more about that at this stage because, you know what, we've got some important work on education to do.
All right. On the Thompson matter, he's received legal support. His costs paid by the ALP, only updated his pecuniary interest register last night, apparently, not within the appropriate time frame. Do you think that is appropriate? Should he be held to account for that as well?
Look, of course, any member in this parliament should update their pecuniary interests in the appropriate time. And there are many instances where people on small things or other things haven't done it. So, of course, that goes without saying. On the question of the support that he's received from the New South Wales Party that's reported today, that's a matter for New South Wales officials. It's questions that you can put to them. I don't know anything about it at all as the member of parliament that's sitting here in this studio talking to you.
Rob Oakeshott now, and Tony Windsor for that matter, said they both say they reserve their right to vote with the coalition on this issue. They're clearly disturbed by what they've seen and read from that Fair Work Australia report. It really is a precarious hold on the parliament, isn't it? And this could bring down the government within a matter of weeks if Rob Oakeshott and Tony Windsor voted to have Craig Thompson removed or his vote not counted in the parliament.
Well, Kieran, you know what? I'm not going to start second-guessing what other members might do, including the crossbenchers. What I would say is that on Tuesday night we brought down a budget that is going to actually provide the support that working families need. And it's a really great budget because it's looking at things like
such a
disability.
Isn't
well,
it?
The budget is sitting there now.
Journalists like myself are compelled to ask you about it because it's a very, very serious issue.
But what I'm saying to you is, look, I'm not going to second-guess what the crossbenchers are going to do. Like other members of the government, I'm focused on the good things that we're doing, the good stuff that's in this budget, and we want to see what Tony Abbott's got to say tonight because he's now on the record as opposing support for Australian families to help their kids with the education costs that they face. That's where the real debate should be.
Peter Garrett, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kieran.